it would be like trying to repaint the inside of a burning building. Like, what's the point? And so you're taking something that's not going to be utilized because the peptides are going to be basically destroyed or invalidated by inflammation, metabolic dysfunction. So if your body's inflamed, if you're metabolically dysregulated, if you're hormonally imbalanced, the peptides will be minimally effective at all. And so that's always where we start as the foundation. Then when someone's foundationally healthy and on a fundamental level, genetics are included, peptides can be an amazing tool.
Welcome to Health Decoded, your number one source for real health information, with your hosts, Dr. Alessi and Matt Tack.
Welcome back to another episode of Health Decoded. I am your host, Dr. Alessi, and I'm very excited to have you here with me today. I appreciate, as always, you tuning in and really just taking this time to learn, empower yourself, to be able to just become a better you and make healthier decisions for yourself and for your family. That really is the mission of this. This podcast is completely free. We don't ask anything from anyone. However, we do ask that if this is valuable and you have learned something from the show, share it with somebody who may need to hear this message and could benefit from this. And that's just ultimately how we're going to continue helping people to become better versions of themselves through natural health. So that being said, today we're diving into one of the most misunderstood and honestly one of the most powerful tools that we use in functional and longevity medicine. And this is what we call nutrigenetic testing, and specifically our NutraPro genetic blood panel. And so I really want to break this down today, because if you've ever said, I eat clean, I do all these healthy things, but I still feel off, or I take supplements, but I don't feel a difference. How do I know if they're working? Or maybe it's my labs look normal, but I don't feel normal. I'm doing all the right things. Why isn't it working? Well, this episode is for you, because what most people don't realize is that nutrition is not universal. And today I'm going to walk you through, number one, how genetics influence health. Do not control it. And so, they say that genetics load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. And so we can have predispositions towards things, but what we do, diet, nutrition, exercise, or lack thereof, really controls how that gene expression is shown in our health. We're going to talk about how the signs that your genes may be interfering despite good habits. We'll talk about what our NutraPro panel actually tests and why it's so important. And then how do we use this data to build custom nutraceutical, peptide, diet, and lifestyle protocols to help people get the best results? So let's get right into it. Genetics influence health, but they do not control it. So let's start by clearing up the myth, right? Your genetics are not your destiny. And if I had $1 for every time somebody was in my clinic and said, well, it runs in my family. Okay, it may, right? It very well may run in your family, but that doesn't mean it has to determine you being healthy or not healthy, right? We don't have to just take that. So the idea that, it's just in my genes has caused more people to give up more than anything else that I hear. And it's because it's almost like this death sentence that people take. There's nothing I can do. It's in my genes. Your genes are not a life sentence. They're a blueprint. And a blueprint doesn't determine whether a building becomes a beautiful home or a structural disaster, does it? It really just depends on how it's built, maintained, and supported. And so your genes may influence how efficiently you absorb nutrition, how well you can convert vitamins into their usable forms. They can control how strong or how weak your detox pathways are. Genes can also control your nervous system, hormones, and metabolism. But it does not mean it completely controls it. They just influence. And so genes provide instructions. Your environment then determines the outcome. And this is where we get into what we call epigenetics, or when it comes to nutrition, nutrigenetics. And so what is epigenetics in real world terms? Epigenetics is the science of how your lifestyle turns genes on or off. So your DNA sequence doesn't change, but how strongly certain genes are expressed absolutely does. So think of your genes like light switches. Some are dim, some are bright, some are flipped on constantly, some barely work at all. And so what controls those switches? Well, epigenetic inputs like nutrition, sleep quality, stress levels, exposure to toxins on a daily basis, your physical activity, levels of inflammation. And this has been demonstrated repeatedly in the scientific literature, including research published in journals like Nature, Cell, the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, showing that nutrient availability directly alters gene expression. So particularly in certain pathways like inflammation and detoxification, your body's antioxidant defense, how is your body going to be prepared for infections and injury and disease? And this used to be considered like fringe science, but not anymore. This is actually foundational biology that's been proven. And so it's also why the same diet works for one person, but not another. And so this is where things get interesting and start to make sense for most people is they run a panel and they understand what their genes are doing. And so, why can two people eat the same clean diet and have different outcomes? Why can two people take the same supplements and have different levels in their blood? And so the completely different results is one person is thriving on these and the other person is struggling. And, that's really where you can get super detailed with these kind of tests, or with our test in particular, to see why that is happening and why blanket nutrition advice is ultimately going to fail. Because some people are going to convert beta carotene to vitamin A efficiently and others will not. Some people activate vitamin D very easily and others struggle despite high intake. Some people process B vitamins smoothly where others bottleneck. And so this is actually something I found out about myself, is that I have a low methylation gene that doesn't allow me to fully process B vitamins. So I have to just, be aware of that. I have to support detox regularly, and I have to take a specific form of B vitamin that my body will actually be able to utilize. And so it's not that the advice is wrong. Hey, take some B vitamins. Hey, eat this healthy, right? Do exercise. Not that it's wrong. That's good advice still, right? It's just that it's incomplete, and maybe it's not 100% specific to you. And so this is where, again, functional medicine has evolved to be so specific to the person. It's not just eat healthier and work out more, right? And so standard supplements sometimes can make people feel worse. And why is that? Well, someone will say, hey, Dr. Alessi, I took a multivitamin. It actually made me anxious, or B vitamins gave me heart palpitations. I felt kind of triggered. I tried supplements and I just felt worse. And so most practitioners, well, maybe just take less, or maybe because it's often not what they're taking, but it's how their body is processing it. And so if you have genetic variations in things like methylation, nutrient transport, detox, antioxidant recycling, you might not convert those vitamins, and you might not be able to tolerate synthetic forms, which is what we mostly see from your basic brands, store-bought vitamins and supplements. And so instead of helping now, that supplement is becoming another stressor on the system, on the body. This is why more is then not better, but precision is better. And so, like I said, genetics load the gun, right? But your lifestyle is what pulls the trigger. And so one of the most important frameworks to understand is that you can have genetic predispositions for things like inflammation, heart disease, oxidative stress, nutrient deficiencies. But whether or not those predispositions turn into disease, like autoimmunity or metabolic dysfunction or even hormone imbalance, depends on how the system is supported. It depends on you, depends on the choices you make, and it really depends on whether or not you care to know to make the right choices. Because if not, again, you are choosing to just almost live in more of a kind of see what happens type of state, which, no judgment on my end, it just seems to be not the best way to go about something. We would want to know if our car is actually running on the proper gasoline, or if we need to put in a different kind of oil, or, oh, I need different tires because it runs better this way. Everyone would say, oh yeah, I want my car to run smoothly. But what about our bodies, right? It's more important. You only get one of these. And so that's the foundation of nutrigenomics, the science of basically matching nutrition and supplementation to your genetic needs. And so instead of asking what supplements should people take, or we ask, what does your biology actually require? And this is exactly what the NutraPro panel is designed to uncover. It's not looking for disease, it's not looking for a diagnosis, but it's looking for efficiency and risk patterns based on your biology and your DNA. It's going to help us understand, where your nutrient pathways are strong, maybe where they're vulnerable, where you need targeted support instead of generic advice. And this is how we move from guessing to testing and using protocols and personalization to get rid of the frustration and really understand what your body needs. And so as we kind of transition into this next segment where I want to talk about, what to look for if possibly your genetics may be working against you, just remember signs and symptoms that suggest your genetics may be interfering with your health. These aren't death sentences. This is insight, and we need to listen to your body, because once you recognize these patterns, everything starts to click. So let's get into that, okay? So let's talk about real life now. I got a little bit high level there with the science and the backgrounds of nutrigenetics, just so you have an understanding. Now, let's talk about some of the most common signs that a genetic nutrient pathway may be impaired. Even if you're doing everything right, you feel like you've been on a very solid program or lifestyle or diet, and it's still not quite what you want. So if supplements don't seem to work, this is number one. Say you take a multivitamin, you're taking magnesium, a B complex, vitamin D, and nothing's happening. It's often not a deficiency problem. It's a utilization problem. So for example, let me break things down here a little bit. Variations in the gene MTHFR, MTR, or MTRR can impair methylation, meaning that B vitamins are not converting efficiently into usable forms within the body. That process of methylation is very important. Your body produces methyl groups, and it attaches them to the B vitamin to then make it where your biology can read that code and actually utilize it. If that's not happening, then you're going to have deficiencies, and from those vitamin deficiencies can come the signs and the symptoms, right? The neuropathies, the pain, the headaches, the irritability, those kind of things. Another example would be variations in the TCN2 or SLC19 gene. This affects B12 and folate transport into the cell. So the nutrient is present, but the cell can't actually use it. And so that's where people are like, am I even absorbing these? Am I even processing these? And maybe you're just flushing a bunch of money down the toilet because you're taking some vitamins and supplements that your body doesn't even know what to do with them. Now, the next part, number two, is, chronic fatigue or brain fog that won't resolve. We see this all the time. So low energy, that's not improving no matter how long you sleep, how much caffeine you drink during the day, or diet or exercise or any of that. And so this could point towards impaired mitochondrial function, possible antioxidant overload, pathway overload, or poor detox capacity. And there's specific genes like SOD2, CAT, and GPX1 that play major roles in your cellular defense against oxidative stress. Now, when these pathways are genetically slower, this is just your biology, the system burns out faster. And so we've seen this time and time again, throwing random vitamins and supplements and even peptides and doing a lot of these high level, really cool things is not getting someone to that point. And so we run a test like this and we find out, wow, your body's actually not even able to process this because you're not detoxing at all. And so it's almost like the system has become like backed up, if you will. Now, the third thing we see is mood issues, anxiety. We talk a lot about, mental health nowadays, and how mental health is very much connected to our physiological health. And so, gut health is very important for the neurotransmitter production, and it heavily relies on your body's ability to process folate, B12, B6, and magnesium. And so if our gut is dysfunctional or damaged, we're not going to be absorbing these vitamins. Our DNA is not going to be working with us. We could have severe deficiencies. And so genetic inefficiencies here will often show up as things like anxiety, irritability, poor tolerance to stress, and maybe even like low motivation, right? Almost like ADHD. And again, labs can look completely normal. Blood work looks normal. You go to your conventional doctor and they say, everything's fine. It's in your head. Well, it's not really in your head. It's in your genes. And so if you look at the right places, you will uncover what's going on. I love analogies. So think of a house, right? You're buying a house, or you just bought a house, and everything looks beautiful. I mean, they did a great job on the renovation, all of that. But for some reason, something smells weird or something's off. And in Florida, if you live in Florida, you can understand this because a lot of people deal with this. There's something within the walls, possibly some mold, possibly some humidity that has created mold. And that was not found because you didn't look deep enough, right? And so there's a problem. The house isn't perfect, but if you just look surface level, you will miss that. And so we have to be able to look deeper to understand where the body needs the most support. Now, the fourth thing and the last part on thing that we look for here usually is like, or you can look for is like immune issues, inflammation or slow recovery. You're always sick. You always have that kind of like congestion or tickle in your throat. Maybe you're inflamed. You feel the body's inflamed and puffy, or you're sore for a long time after exercise, longer than normal or you would expect. Maybe you're really struggling with your gut health. You have a lot of gut-related symptoms. So we find that genes related to vitamin D activation, such as VDR, CYP2R1, GC, and glutathione pathways, the GST and GPX genes, often play a role here because the body's immune system is fundamentally ineffective. You know, you can take all the things in the world. Oh, I take the manuka honey and the elderberry, and I'm on vitamin C, 5,000 milligrams. I'm doing all these things. But if, again, that vitamin D activator gene is not working, wasted time, wasted money, wasted effort, right? And not that it's completely wasted. Again, maybe you're getting a percentage of that, 10, 20%. But to be the most effective, which I'm sure most people listening to this show could agree is better, we need to know what the body's actually doing. And so this is where, you know, most people finally realize like, oh, it's not that I'm failing. My body just needs different input. And I'll tell you, you know, personal story on my account, like so many things changed when I did this test on myself. Because I used to do if you know me, I do all the right things. I'm exercising all the time, I'm making sure I'm recovering, stress management, you know, meditation, therapy, like doing it all. And still there was like a piece, I'm like, man, I don't even know if I'm even healthy right now. I feel something's off. And I ran this panel and I found that, okay, methylation, my body doesn't methylate B vitamins, detox capacity is reduced or is, you know, biologically slower. And so I need to support that on a regular basis, quarterly detoxes throughout my life. And then how do I optimize other things? And so it gave me insight into the best time of day for me to actually work out. And it's not in the morning, which I used to do. I used to work out first thing in the morning. This would almost like spike my cortisol too high. And then the rest of the day, I would almost be like ineffective versus based on my biology and my DNA, better time for me to exercise more like middle of the day. Once I've had some carbohydrates and had some food, the best time for me to get my mental work done and focus work done is like right now. I'm filming this podcast at 6:30 in the morning. And so that's where my brain is just operating at its best and when my body is going to support. So knowing these things helps us to then not just affect nutrition. Now we're talking epigenetics, like lifestyle. And that's where it's really cool. A lot of people, when they find those things out, they're like, man, that makes so much sense. I need 8 hours of sleep. Or maybe you're one of those people that needs like 4 hours of sleep. It's really dependent on your DNA. So now let's talk about what the NutraPro panel tests and why. Because, okay, it's cool to know, but why is that important and how do we apply that? So let's talk about the test itself. The NutraPro panel is a genetic-based nutrition and lifestyle assessment test using a simple cheek swab that you can do at home. No needles, no fasting, no stress really. And it analyzes genetic markers involved in what we talked about: nutrient absorption, nutrient metabolism, detox pathways, antioxidant defense, and fatty acid conversion. The key genetic categories that we're testing are methylation pathways. This is MTHFR, MTR, MTRR. So these genes influence folate and B12 metabolism, detoxification, neurotransmitter production, and cardiovascular health. This is one of the most clinically impactful areas that we see and can make dramatic change with our patients, particularly maybe patients who are having slow healing times or slow recovery or neuropathy that won't go away. We find that limits in these methylation pathways is really the biggest needle that we can turn to override that. The next one is the vitamin D pathway. So VDR, CYP2R1, and GC, these determine how vitamin D is activated how it's transported, how cells respond to it. And this directly impacts your immune health, your bone density, and inflammation. Antioxidant and detox pathways, we test these through the SLC23A1, GSTT1, GPX1, SOD2, CAT, and QO1. And so these genes govern vitamin C transport, glutathione production, which is our body's master antioxidant, as well as cellular protection from oxidative stress. This is huge for people with chronic inflammation, exposure to toxins, whether that's environmental, mold, really anything, aging, and recovery. So for longevity, how can we optimize the function of this gene? Now, fatty acid and choline metabolism. So we're checking the FADS1 and the PEMT gene. These affect omega-3 conversion, brain health, and inflammation balance. And so again, this is going to explain why some people don't respond well to fish oil supplementation or an anti-inflammatory diet, right? And so the NutraPro panel doesn't just diagnose disease. It identifies risk patterns and inefficiencies, allowing us to intervene before breakdown even occurs. And so I use an analogy that I said the other day that kind of took Matt by surprise, and he was like, wow, that's actually really good. And I was like, yeah, it actually kind of made sense, and I made it up. But if you're walking down the road with a friend, your significant other, whoever, and there's a puddle in front of you, does it make more sense to say, hey, watch out for that puddle, and then have them walk around it? Or will you just let them walk through the puddle and then offer to dry their shoes or clean their shoes after? I think every sane person would say it makes more sense to say, hey, watch out for that puddle and just avoid it. And that's what we're talking about here. How can we watch out for and avoid damage, inflammation, disease before it even becomes a problem? And we're doing that all the time. So, how do we then implement this data? We just learned all these things about your genetics and your nutrigenetic, profile, how your body responds to things. This is where everything comes together, because testing without action is cool, but it's actually useless. And so here's how we apply the NutraPro results clinically. We do this all the time at Ascend Functional Health, and it's actually a big staple in most of our testing protocols to get the optimal results. And so we use custom nutraceutical formulations. And so we're going to select them based on the correct form of the vitamin or nutrient, the correct dosage for your body based on your genetics, and the correct combinations. So, for example, methylated versus non-methylated B vitamins, active folate versus folic acid, which is actually a synthetic version that can sometimes, if you have an issue, block your body from using folate. And so if you're taking folic acid with a MTHFR mutation, you're actually going to make the problem worse. And then specific antioxidant blends for glutathione support. So there's no more guessing. You're taking the right stuff. Now, targeted supplementation timing, that's the next piece we work on. We adjust, is it better morning versus evening? Should you take things in synergy? Take this with this, or take these apart from each other because they're going to interfere? What we call like nutrient competition. This will dramatically improve the effectiveness. And so then for patients with poor recovery, inflammation, maybe higher levels of mitochondrial stress, peptide therapy. And so we can integrate peptides that support cellular repair and signaling. We always guide these by genetics and labs. We're never just randomly giving people peptides. And here's a quick sidebar, is that a lot of people have heard of peptides and we're very familiar with them. We talked about these on a previous episode, so you can go back a couple episodes and listen if you're not familiar with peptides. But it's a very popular word nowadays. Everyone's talking about peptides. However, what they're not talking about is, do they actually work if your body is dysfunctional? And the truth is they don't. They're limited. And so, it would be like trying to repaint the inside of a burning building. Like, what's the point? And so you're taking something that's not going to be utilized because the peptides are going to be basically destroyed or invalidated by inflammation, metabolic dysfunction. So if your body's inflamed, if you're metabolically dysregulated, if you're hormonally imbalanced, the peptides will be minimally effective at all. And so that's always where we start, as the foundation, by the way. Then when someone's foundationally healthy and on a fundamental level, genetics are included, peptides can be an amazing tool. It's like a Swiss Army knife. You can turn things on and off. And so definitely something really cool that we've implemented. And then diet personalization. And so we will adjust fat ratios based on the FADS gene, protein tolerance, protein timing, micronutrient density, meal timing, caffeine. Some people need more choline, right? And so more antioxidants. Some people need to reduce their oxidative load, so they need to actually detoxify. And then lifestyle and stress modulation, right? This is probably the biggest thing because this is free. You can just do this, right? But optimizing sleep. How do we optimize the nervous system and regulate it, right? With certain things like vagus nerve stimulation through humming, chanting, deep breathing, and then exercise volume adjustments, making sure the dose matches the goals. I found for myself that working out 5 to 6 days a week was actually more than my body really needed. And I got better results from 3 days a week full body than daily split routine training. And again, that's me. It doesn't mean that's you, but because a genetically sensitive system really needs that precision and not just more, right? It's not more. And so, in wrapping up here, I hope this was helpful, and I hope this provided some cool insight for people, because these are some of the newer things that are available nowadays that a lot of people are not familiar with. But if you've ever felt frustrated that your health hasn't responded the way that it should, this could be that missing layer, because the NutraPro panel helps us move from that generic advice to personalized, from guessing towards precision, and really from frustration to clarity, really knowing how to tweak and fine-tune the things on a deep genetic cellular level, because your body's not broken. It just speaks a language, and most systems never bother to really translate that language. And that's exactly what we do at Ascend Functional Health. So if you're interested in learning more about our functional medicine protocols or programs, reach out to us. Go to ascendfunctionalhealth.com. You can email us at ask@alessifxhealth.com. We're always open to taking questions and seeing how we can support you. And if you mention that you heard about us on the podcast, we have exclusive discounts as well as a free gift when you come in or speak to one of our providers. And so I want to thank you for listening to Health Decoded. If this episode resonated with you at all, or if you just thought it was cool, please share it with someone who's maybe doing everything that they think's right, but is still possibly struggling, or someone who just finds this information valuable or helpful. That's how we can spread the knowledge, spread the mission, which is, our mission is to provide the highest level of wellness and longevity-based care so that you can have optimized health and use that to make an impact on the world and your family. And so I wish you the best, and thank you for joining me today. I will see you on the next episode.
Thank you for tuning in to Health Decoded, where we break down the truth about all things health and empower you to take charge of your well-being. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. For more resources and personalized support, visit us at alessifunctionalhealth.com and sign up for our newsletter. To hear your questions answered live on the show, send them to ask@alessifxhealth.com. That's ask@alessifxhealth.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay empowered, and remember, your health is in your hands.